it's time that you knew there's someone there who's searching for you, and it's time that you believe he's gonna find you.
Why, hello everyone, and welcome once again to Two Guys Fixing the World. My name's Mark Stannard, and with me is my good friend Ryan Jans. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Mark. Just a quick shout out. It's a Tuesday, November 26th, I believe. Right?
As we record, yep.
Sure, it's been 26, yes. And as of Sunday, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, our city where we are recording this podcast from, our football team has finally won a Grey Cup. So way to go, blue and gold. It's only been 29 years. That means I was 7 the last time you guys won.
And for those of you who are good at math,
now that I've dated myself.
So those of you who are good at mathematics have already figured out Ryan is 21. Right, so that's good.
Well, depending on what part of the podcast you listen to.
Yeah, and while we're on the subject, the reason why they don't win very often is because they name themselves Blue, Sad, Bombers, people that lose. They are the sad losers. They call themselves that. Why? What the hell? Come on. Yeah, so someone's going to listen to this get really pissed off.
That's another show.
That's every time someone says Blue Bombers, I bring that up. It's amazing. I don't have any sports friends. Anyhow, you go figure, eh? So those of you who are enjoying the show so far, you can catch all the show details, contact information, and news about future shows, but definitely lots of references to all shows, all the different areas you can find us all over the web on fixingtheworld.ca. And what are we fixing in the world? Well, what in the world are we fixing today, Ryan?
Today I'm cracking my knuckles here. I don't know if you guys could hear that.
Lovely.
Our knuckles. We're going after the big ones. The Canadian Senate.
Ooh, hiss.
Now, up until probably about 10 years ago, I didn't even know we had a Senate. Canada has a Senate? Yes, we have a Senate. So this first episode that we're going to let's try that again. We're going to dedicate this first show into sort of a history and a background of the Senate, some of the qualifications for senators and disqualifying factors, as well as we're going to allude to some of the scandals, which there are many of, in our Senate, and somehow they don't seem to break. But if you're familiar with the last Harper administration, you will be very familiar with a senator named Mike Duffy, which we will eventually get to that scandal.
Indeed.
So, without further ado, part 1, Canada's Senate. This is a quote here from our first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald, described the Senate as a sober second thought that would curb the democratic excesses of the elected House of Commons and provide regional representation. Now, we could probably spend an entire episode on the irony of John A. Macdonald and using the word sober, but again,
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know.
Yeah,
right, sorry.
Yes. Right. Towards the end of his prime ministership, I guess is what we would call it. It was not uncommon for him to have a pitcher of gin that looked like, obviously looks like water.
A pitcher.
Sitting on his table.
A pitcher.
Yeah.
Like normal working class people would share a pitcher of beer, that kind of pitcher.
Yes, a glass pitcher that was full of gin.
And he was alive. He lived. Man, that's crazy. Okay, I'm blown away. Sorry, I digress.
Really I don't know if you got through the whole thing. Yes. Okay, so the history of the Senate. So we're the history of the Senate. The Senate has actually been around not too much longer after Confederation. Formed in 1867 under the British North American Act. Reforms as early as 1874. That's like what are we at here? 7 3s. 3 That's 7 years later. Parliament and 1909 internally. So they've gone through numbers of reforms. Western alienization in the 1960s and 70s. So this Wexit or Western exit is not a new thing. and the first proposal of an elected Senate to Senate abolishment, those go from all the way from the 70s all the way up into the 2010s. Like I mentioned, to the Harper administration, one of his key electoral promises was to reform the Senate, and that didn't exactly go out very well for him. So, I know all you listeners are wondering. So, how do these guys get to be senators, men and women?
I was
Must
wondering.
when I was once were okay. At least Mark was.
Yes,
Okay,
I'm paying attention. Yes.
Okay. So the qualifications for a senator, and this is taken out of a couple of different sources here. Always our sources are posted online at fixingtheworld.ca. These particular ones are listed under a Wikipedia article, Senate of Canada qualifications. Again, link on the website. Qualifications. There are 4 of them. Are you ready?
Ready.
You must be a Canadian citizen. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you. Is it dual citizenship? Is that allowed if you're a Canadian citizen? And you're,
you know what? If you're, it just says Canadian citizen. So if you are a citizen of Canada, I'm taking it because you're a great British citizen as well as a Canadian
great.
citizen.
Yes, great.
Yes.
I see what you mean. Yes.
Yes, you are a great British citizen.
As well.
Yes, you would.
Although
I believe you would qualify.
Although
I don't think it actually goes into specific. It just says you must be a Canadian citizen.
I do actually consider myself Canadian. I don't really identify as British anymore. Anyhow, carry on.
All right. There you go. So must be a Canadian citizen. So I qualify. So does Mark.
Hey.
Must be at least 30.
Hey.
Well, I qualify, and so does Mark.
Okay, that's kind of ageist, is it not? And it seems to be arbitrary as well.
Yeah, and we'll start picking that apart. That's yes, definitely. I'm writing this down as we ageist and arbitrary, the double A's. But okay, so far, Mark and I have qualified on 2 points to be senator. Must own property in the province that they represent. Well, I don't quite own a house. The bank owns most of it, so I'm giving myself half a check mark for that. Mark, I think.
I think that legally you own the house, although the bank can, because your name's on the deed, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we would both qualify that being homeowners. Oh, yeah. Okay. Even though we are really the bank carries the marker for the debts. Anyhow,
right, and that's another show. All
yes.
Keep coming up with these great ideas. Okay, so 3 out of the 4 qualifications so far, Mark and I both qualify. I've given us both check marks on all of these. That's awesome. Okay, here's the last and final qualification.
Drum roll.
All right. You must own real and personal properties valued $400 or $4,000 above the debts and liabilities. So as long as you have $4,000 worth of real estate that is above your debts and liabilities, you're in. These are the people that review our laws, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
So,
and
sober second thought by a bunch of people who are obviously wealthy landowners, which doesn't surprise me at all, being it was formed under the British North America Act in 1867, where that point in the States, people...
Putting that into perspective, that $4,000, I think we can all say somewhere along the line that we've got $4,000 worth of savings, or we've got, just point to one of our cars for crying out loud. We've got a car. There you go. That's you know, I can probably easily sell one of my cars for about $4,000. But in perspective, when was that? When were these rules, particularly that dollar amounts? When was that set?
Well, I'm gonna guess that $4,000 in age 30, that really speaks about that 1867 to 1874 era. So within the first 7 years of the Senate. A lot of these have been that would be something that would have to look into, and maybe I can find that out for you before we record the next episode. But these have been basically those really put in the qualifications. So if you think about it, it's not uncommon throughout the history of both Great Britain and the North American colonies, including America and Canada, that only wealthy landowners could vote. So the idea of having a vote in an electoral process or in a legislative process, that fits in very well with that type of politics structure of that sort of era. But I will find that out for you.
Actually, here we go. Right. So in 1890, here we go, $4,000, which doesn't seem like much now. In today, we're taking into account inflation. It actually calculates up to $113,200. $113,200. So that is, if you're making minimum wage, that's what? Divide that. That's 10 years. 10 years of pay before taxes for 10 years.
Before taxes, without any expenses.
Yeah. Was it 10 years? Oh, no, sorry, 5 years, right? So whatever. Yeah, so $20,000 is what someone minimum wage would make here in Manitoba. So yeah, that shows that's a lot of money. So if you're making a minimum wage, you're a low-end worker, screw you.
Yeah.
But
so basically, what it comes down to is, if you want to be in the Senate, you got to be a citizen of Canada. You must be 30. You must own property, and you must have money.
Yep.
So
and something else I want to add. And then there was additional comments. There was not beholden to economic vagaries and turmoil. So if you're not making enough money, even if you have that kind of money, and you're in a dodgy financial system with your work or whatever, and you could and a depression could hurt you, or something could happen, that would disqualify you. So if you're making, if you're an average worker, well, the fact that you will be denied it because economic vagaries, which I did look that up earlier, just means the ups and downs and the chaos of the economic system. So if you don't have a lot of money put aside, or enough money put aside so that you can coast during the bad times, you don't qualify to be in the Senate.
Yep. So how then, that raises the question, in which we will have to identify probably in our next episode. How could you trust those qualifications, people who meet those qualifications, to do a sober recount or sober second reading, as what's often said, of the Senate for our judicial and lawmaking?
Wouldn't that be a fourth reading
process?
That would be the fourth.
How can we trust that those people?
Yeah, I just want to interject. Yeah. That would be the fourth reading, because you have to have three successful readings for it to become law in the House. So this, anyhow, right? That's probably just a little bit of semantics there, right. I guess. But anyway, it's a bit silly. So yeah, sorry, I interrupted. So I interrupted the flow. Really sorry.
Yeah. So one would think, man, if you're a senator and you're going to review law, it might be a good idea to have a law degree. It might be a good idea to have a political science degree. It might be a good idea to have labor relations and things like that. Like it, or at the very least, a human resources degree, right? You don't want, this really is just opening it up to saying, hey, we're elected rich officials. Let's get our rich buddies in there to do a sober second count of our law and get it passed. So it just has left itself open for scandal and for abuse.
Well, it has. And
it's one of the things.
Sorry, and I just want to say, and the qualifications too are, I mentioned the age 30 is a bit arbitrary. There might be some arguments to have for people to be older even, or be much younger. But the other laws seem to be arbitrary too, because we had an example as well. In 1997, the Senate appointed Sister Peggy Butts, great name, a Catholic nun who had actually taken a vow of poverty and probably did some good work in her life and was honoured by a point in the Senate. But she did not have $4,000 to her name. She could not So she was actually given a gift when her order actually gave her the money and the land so that she could sit. So it's really kind of silly if someone could just give you the money and give you something that so you meet the qualifications. Seems like the qualifications themselves have no real value.
Yeah. So like as I had mentioned before,
And
it really seems like it's just a mechanism for our elected officials to get their rich buddies.
Yeah. And I've got nothing against Peggy Butts, Sister Peggy Butts. I'm glad she saw something in for her life.
I hope people understand that our scorn about the situation isn't about the fact that a woman or a nun got to be a senator.
Not at all.
Neither of those things are what we're worried about. We're more worried about the fact that someone had to give her an arbitrary number just so that she could qualify, which just seems absurd.
Yep, absolutely. If she's the right person for the position, who cares about the $4,000 in a little parcel of land? Anyhow.
Exactly. So, anyway, so we've talked about qualifications and the absurdity of the qualifications. Disqualifying factors. So some of these. So now that we've had a thrilling adventure of qualifications, let's talk about what can get you booted out of the Senate.
Yes.
There's
almost nothing.
There are 6 points of disqualifying factors. Okay. So if you fail to attend 2 consecutive sessions of the Senate.
And what is a session?
Hang on a second here.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can find that.
Here we go. The magic of live television. Oh, that's right.
Live podcast where we can look them up on Google. Canadian Senate.
Yeah. I'm not sure why that's something like that. I mean, the intent of it is obviously you don't turn up for a job. You lose your job.
Don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, so there's nothing. That's reasonable, but it depends how long a session is. Is a session they miss one day, or they miss 6 months?
I'm just looking at that right now.
Yeah.
Canadian.
Yes, here we go.
Canadian Senate.
Okay, do we have to come back to this one?
I think so.
I asked a hard question now.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a great question though. So I'm going to mark that off so we can go next time. Okay, so if you become a subject or a citizen of a foreign power, again, this is a little ubiquitous. I'm imagining that if you have a dual citizenship, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, well, that was why I brought that up, because of that. Yeah, so I was a British citizen and became a Canadian one, having the dual. But yeah, going the other way. So can you not be a dual citizen and can be Canadian and get your British citizenship because you can retain both? Would that disqualify you? Don't know, but the idea, so the idea of defecting to another country, I'm not opposed to that. Seems reasonable, at least on one level of that.
Yes, and that makes sense. So like when you it's actually really difficult to become a Canadian and U.S. dual citizen. It's not unheard of, but it's become much more difficult. Usually the U.S. wants you to totally cut ties with your former country and become a United States citizen. And that's fine for their immigration part, whatever. That's the rules that they set. So if you decided you wanted to become a United States citizenship and you couldn't get your dual citizenship, that would probably, you couldn't be a senator anymore, which makes perfect sense. That's actually one of the things that are on this list that makes perfect sense. In fact, I'm going to highlight this and point it out. It says, hey, this makes sense. Okay. Way to go, Senate. You got one thing that made sense. You're disqualified if you were declared to be bankrupt or insolvent, applies for protection in such cases as becomes a public defaulter. So if you spend all your money, you can't be a senator anymore. I don't understand that one.
It's the whole idea as but I can kind of see it. I mean, it does disqualify someone that's just had hard times because of maybe the minimum wage thing we talked about in our last few shows.
Yeah.
So, yeah, poor people have already been accounted out of by the disqualified by the qualifications.
They've
Yeah.
been disqualified by the qualifications.
If not literally, at least in spirits, by the current interpretation. But on the other hand, do you want someone in power that's desperate for money? Easy to go. Here's a couple of grand. Make that vote go my way. So there's something to be said for someone who's desperate for something, desperate for money.
Yeah,
could lead to corruption.
That does make a little bit more sense. Again,
but on the other hand, if you have declared bankruptcy, why would you? And you've come through it. You've done what you've legally been required to do. Why could you not run? Why could you not run? Or why could you not have hold a position later?
Yeah, so maybe that's more of a okay. Go get your stuff in order, and then you can come back. We would have to do a little bit more digging in on that.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, we had a position with a certain U.S. president who declared bankruptcy 5 times. Right.
Yep, and he's probably going to declare it at least once more after the impeachment trials.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a second point that actually makes perfect sense for disqualification. If you are convicted of treason or a felony, you can't be a senator.
Yep.
Congratulations, Senate. That's 2 out of 5 so far. That are making sense. You got a second highlight from me. Good job.
Yep. It depends what
I don't think we have.
It depends what they mean by a felony. However, I'm not necessarily opposed to that if you're a bank robber. Yeah, you probably shouldn't be put in charge of effectively a treasury position. I'm not sure if Senate has a treasury position, but it probably wouldn't be overly trustworthy. However, you've lived an exemplary life for the last 20 years. Why could you not be considered? Yeah. Anyhow, right.
Yeah.
But the treason.
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 Yeah. If it's real treason, not that that junky stuff that Trump's been accused of. Anyhow, but real treason.
Exactly.
Real treason. Absolutely no. There's probably a case for. I'm not an advocate of the death penalty, but there's a case for the death penalty. I think for treason. And I'm not advocating it at all.
Sell out your country, then yes, we don't really want you, and the people you sold us out to probably don't want you either. That's the terrible thing about treason.
Indeed.
Now, the only other thing I would say is what defines felony, right? Like you said, if the guy made some mistakes when he's young, but he's been pardoned of the felony, that should disqualify you.
So it would be an indictable offense, is what I kind of looked up earlier.
Yeah, okay, that sounds about right. Now, again, the felony part is like, well, if you speed and get caught, that's a felony. So I mean,
but you're not indicted. But you're not indicted in front of the grand jury, though.
This is
right.
True.
Yeah, that would be a misdemeanor. You can't be jailed for it.
That's right. However, and since we're going to take a swipe at John A. McDonald being a drunk, if you're convicted of drunk driving, you definitely could face jail time, and you could be facing things like criminal negligence. So, I guess there's a fine line. But I think I do have
a definition. I have at least a high-level definition.
Okay.
It's Weisberg.ca, a look at the classification of offences in Canada and the United States. And I guess go back to the summary. So there'll be things like murder, terrorism, cocaine trafficking. Felony crimes can be punishable by life in certain states in the US. And minor offences are considered misdemeanors. So felonies would be the big ones.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's good. That's great.
Yeah.
And that was Weisberg.ca, like
Weisberg.ca. Yeah, obviously I just read the summary there, but there's a couple of pages there, not too long. It says indictable offences. Yep. There we go.
Okay.
So
and
serious stuff.
again,
Yes, I agree.
I'm
I
not
agree.
going to spend too much time Yeah, this actually. So we have two out of 5 so far. The
Right.
last one ceases to be qualified in respect of property or resident. Now there is an exception here when they're required to stay in Ottawa. Obviously, you can't stay in your residence.
Hang,
So if you
hang,
get
hang.
called to go to
Oh,
Ottawa,
stop
in one of the
the
sessions,
bus a
we'll look
second.
that up.
How can you be in both houses at once? Is that what that means? You can be an elected MP, and you can be in the upper house as well. Is that what did I read that right? Because that just sounds absolutely wrong.
No. I know there's a conflict of interest with the Senate, which we'll get to in the second episode. But
Oh, okay, fair enough.
It says
Good
ceases
stuff.
to be
I can wait.
qualified in respect of property or residence.
Yep.
So if you lose your house if you're the senator for Manitoba and you lose your house in Manitoba and you lose all your property stuff, you cannot be a senator anymore.
Right.
So it becomes down to that property.
But the question, but the proviso there is except where you stay in Ottawa because they hold a government office. That's what I'm saying. If they hold a government office in, if they hold a government office in Ottawa, and that would be different from the Senate, would it not?
No, because the Senate is considered to be an arm of the government. So, and that was part of the Mike Duffy, or at least a portion of the Mike Duffy scandal. So what was happening is he was padding his expense account by taking the expenses that he accrued in Ottawa and applied them against his like cottage in PEI.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Well, we'll talk about
that's
that.
where they had grounds to disqualify him.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about it in the next episode because we'll run out of stuff to say in the next episode otherwise, right?
Exactly. So that there. That just seems sort of a part of that ubiquitous property ownership in 30 and 1890s type of law. Doesn't seem like it would be a very good type of disqualifying factor.
Yeah.
There could be any number of reasons, right? Like PEI could experience some weather, and all of a sudden your cottage that he's claiming to be his residence that he owns and is 2 feet under the waves, you have now lost your house. Does that mean you are disqualified as a senator? There's all kinds of things that could there. So it's a little bit ubiquitous and and not really clear.
Yeah.
About
yeah. Okay.
That. But, in terms of things like actually losing your house. Like if you were foolish with your money and you lost your house because you defaulted on a mortgage, well, that also lends into the declared bankrupt because you're most likely going to pull up bankrupt for that if you've defaulted on a loan like that.
Yeah.
So there's a few different things that could feed into that, and I guess if you look at it in that context, it's okay.
Okay, so that's kind of our overview of the Senate. Well, I think we can roll over. I think we had one more point I think we were going to make, but we can probably roll over to the next episode. I think it'll make a good, help us to recap. Any closing thoughts there before we say goodbye?
I'll dictate this out real quick and then we'll explore it in part 2. The main use of the Senate is to offset the representation in regards to population and the House. It is supposed to be a review process for lawmaking. So basically what's happening is, and most people know this when we have an election, as soon as the East, Ontario and Quebec close their polls, you pretty much know who's going to form government. The idea of this introducing the Senate was to give Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba a little bit more clout when it comes to reviewing law. We'll get into that a little bit more. I think that's about it. Can bring us into land. That is our very brief overview of the Senate, and for the history, qualifications, disqualifying factors, and all the information that we've been babbling on about here for the last 20 or so minutes. You can check us out at fixingtheworld.ca. If you are so inclined to listen to us more, you can come join us with our other video and podcasts The Invisible Man Show, with our good friend Colorado Phil as a co-host, and often have musical guests and interviews of promoting albums and independent music. And we also have Musical Mire. Aside from being working professionals, as Mark and I have stated before, we are also musicians and content creators. And Musical Mire is created with the purpose of talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of being independent creative contents. So like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined, and check us out on wherever all your favorite podcasts are. This has been Mark David Stollard and Ryan Jantz. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you very much, and goodbye. See you soon.
He's gonna find you.